Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. I'm your host, Greg Banks, and today we're diving into something that could literally change the trajectory of your post-military career. If you're a veteran or a military spouse staring at the civilian job market like a crowded New York City street, loud, confusing, and a little overwhelming, this episode's for you. I'm joined by Navy veteran and American Corporate Partners staff member Andrea Bryant, who spent a decade in uniform driving security boats, serving overseas, and drilling through COVID, and then built a second chapter helping veterans and military spouses land meaningful, well-paid careers through one-on-one mentorship. In this conversation, you'll discover what ACP actually does and why their free, year-long mentorships are so powerful, who qualifies as a protege or spouse, and how simple it is to apply. What really happens inside a mentorship, from goal setting to networking, interviewing, and salary negotiation, and why mentors don't have to be veterans, and how civilians can play a huge role in your success. We'll talk about underemployment, imposter syndrome, the reality of networking without the cringe, and how one connection can be the difference between a job and a career that you can be proud of. Thanks for spending time with us today and for trusting this space as you navigate your own journey from service to civilian life. Let's get into my conversation with Andrea Bryant from ACP. Welcome to the show, Andrea Bryant. Among other things we're going to discuss today, Andrea is not only a Navy veteran with over a decade of service, but she's also with ACP, American Corporate Partners. Thank you so much for your service to our nation, and thank you for joining us on the show today.
Well, thanks so much for your support and for having me. Excited to be here.
On the show, we've talked a little bit about this offline. We want to highlight the people and the resources that can absolutely make a difference on your journey from military service to civilian life. We're grateful for the work ACP does for the veteran community. We've invited you guys onto the show because I want you to be able to tell the story firsthand. In your case, both from the inside and the outside of what that journey looks like. Before we get too deep, though, let's talk a little bit about Andrea and your time in the service. How did you come to find your way into the military? Talk a little bit about your time in and when you got out, why?
Yeah, so I kind of always had at the back of my mind that I wanted to join the military. Never was particularly sure which branch. And finally, my parents, background, I grew up in California, born and raised there. My parents retired to Idaho. I kind of followed them to Idaho, and I didn't really have too much going on for me. And so I decided, you know what, this might be the perfect time to finally join the military, see what it's all about. My dad had been in the Army, was in and out before I was born. My uncles had served, so it just seemed like, it's my time now. So I joined the Navy technically in 2008. Of course, the delayed entry program, so I didn't actually leave for boot camp for another year. And originally was on an EOD contract that didn't quite work out how I had planned, so I ended up becoming a Master at Arms. And went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois, and then down to A school in San Antonio, Texas, at Lackland Air Force Base. Pretty short school, I think only about 8 weeks. And, they always say, join the Navy, see the world. So I went from southern Idaho to western Washington. Quite a change. But yeah, from there, I ended up driving small security boats, which is definitely a part of being a Master at Arms. Not the biggest section that a lot of people think of, like gate checking IDs, law enforcement, that type of thing, but still falling under the umbrella of security. Did that for a couple years. Then for the last about year of my time on active duty, they sent me over to Bahrain for a year, again, driving security boats. And at that point, I'd kind of had enough of the Navy. I was missing my family over there, and I knew I wanted to get out. Decided, all right, now's the perfect opportunity, move back to be a little closer to the family, go back to school. So little factoid, whenever someone enlists, whether they say it's for 2 or 4 years, they're really enlisting for 8 years. So, okay, you do your 4 years of active, well, then you're in the individual ready reserve, like your name's on a list. Maybe you got to respond to some email blasts. So that's what I did for a couple of years while I was going to school. Once I wrapped up with school, right about the time I was graduating, the prior service recruiter contacted me and said, what do you think about becoming a drilling reservist? I thought, you know what? That'd be a great idea. Reserves, did the active duty thing. It's not really for me anymore, but reserves could be great. So joined the reserves in 2016. I got to drill out of Salt Lake City and really enjoyed my time there. Got to go down to El Salvador for my 2 weeks of annual training. A lot of my active duty Navy buddies are down there. And then in 2018, I moved to New York City. So can't drill out of Salt Lake anymore. Ended up in Long Island and found myself in a unit of total strangers, nevertheless friendly. And then one of my pals from A school, going back to A school, was in this unit. Just a happy coincidence. But yeah, got to work with those guys for a couple years, and then just a kind of a goofy thing with paperwork. I just suddenly got transferred from Long Island to the Bronx and spent the last 2 years there. But that was during COVID, so it was all online. Rarely saw any folks from my unit. But yeah, that was my 10 years in a nutshell. A lot of security, a lot of weekend warrior stuff. And then the last 2 years I was in a logistics unit, so I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, you've had about as diverse geographical views in your time as anybody I've heard. Those are some pretty unique places you've been. And I don't know that I've talked to anybody about reserving during COVID. I don't remember the news cycle. They did probably a lot of stuff happened that they didn't talk about on the news, but not a whole lot going on to physically go out and those kinds of things that we quite often would see reserves called up for. So.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean, kind of more local deployments, that might be more National Guard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I only drilled in person a couple of times throughout those 2 years. If we had to come in and get, you still have to get your medical stuff done or whatever else. But I mean, for 2 years, our unit did not run a physical fitness test, which you're supposed to do twice a year.
Right.
So we had people really struggling to pass once we came back. And I don't know if other units started drilling in person prior to us, maybe because we were in New York City, a little bit more stringent on regulations, going clear into 2022, whereas I think a lot of other places, probably Florida, for example, they were probably in person at that point.
So once you made the decision to kind of wrap that up, tell me about how you crossed paths with ACP. What was your first encounter with them?
Yeah. So I was still living in Utah at the time. And, I had some friends in New York City. I'd been out for visits, had a great time, and thought, if I lived there, I'd be having these great times all the time.
Right.
So I started planning, I think I want to move to New York City, need to start job searching. So I found ACP on LinkedIn and I thought, you know what, this is great because I get to work with my fellow veterans and everything else. I think this is something I could do. Just reading the requirements, I'm qualified. I can do this job. I've got the work experience, the bachelor's degree, everything. So yeah, I applied and I started my my interview process while I was still in Utah, and I gave them timelines, everything else. So my second interview, which would have been my first in person, I had the day after I moved to New York City. So yeah, I had a couple of in person interviews, and which is kind of insane if you really step back and look at it, is I moved to New York City without having a firm job offer. I don't recommend that. But yeah, I didn't have a job for the first couple months that I was living there, and then ACP gave me a firm offer, and it was just a natural decision. I was ready to jump on the opportunity and jump right in, and it might have been perhaps a little bit different than I initially expected, but in a good way. Really enjoy the people I work with. Not everyone at ACP is a veteran. In fact, very few of us are, and that's okay. I kind of thought, well, they're not veterans. They're not going to get it. And honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. We have just a great team. They're easy to work with. They're conscientious. So I really, really enjoyed the experience just right out of the gate and connected with my colleagues. And it's just been a wonderful program, both for me professionally, but also as a protege. I've had the pleasure of having my own mentorship and advancing my own career goals, whether it be managerial skills, networking, all those great things, just gaining a bigger picture of everything and being able to apply that with the people I work with, but colleague wise, but also ACP participant wise.
Fantastic. Let's kind of segue over into ACP corporate. This is unlike past guests where I've been talking about veterans or military spouses who've gone on their journey. We really want to spotlight who ACP is. Who is the company? Where do they come from? Who founded it? What's been the if there was a mission statement, if you will, at the beginning of this thing, I don't know if that's evolved over time, but ACP is a big machine with a lot of success, a great track record. And we'll talk some more about the stats a little later, but tell us a little bit about ACP. What is the purpose behind it? What if somebody's looking for help? Why would they choose ACP? What would they expect when they encounter that?
Absolutely. Yeah, ACP's been around a while, since 2008. And if you're a veteran, post 9/11 veteran, or an active duty spouse, you're looking to advance your career goals. And a lot of times it's about finding a job, and not just any job, a meaningful one. And that's where this service came about, is to offer that to veterans and to spouses at no charge. It's amazing from my end to be able to read through some of the mentor profiles and think, wow, if I worked with this guy outside of ACP, I couldn't afford him. And that's the type of experience that our mentors are bringing. But, understanding a little bit about the history of ACP goes a long way towards explaining the modern structure. So it was founded by our founder, Sidney Goodfriend, in 2008, and he is a former Merrill Lynch banker. So a lot of the companies, both then and now, you're going to find are going to tend more towards the finance industry. And the great thing about it, ACP stands for American Corporate Partners. We brought these companies on board as corporate partners. They would provide the funding for the mentorships as well as the mentors. That's how we're able to offer it at no charge to our proteges. Over the years, we've added more corporate partners, of course, in a variety of different industries, whether it be, again, finance, but, could be maybe more logistics like an Amazon, or tech, or defense like Lockheed Martin. And so we've expanded the different types of industries that we can expose our proteges to. In addition to that, we also have some smaller companies that have joined us, and we've also expanded our grants, which is phenomenal. There's a lot of niche things that our proteges look for, and a lot of them, for instance, might be interested in federal employment. Well, if you're working for Morgan Stanley, you're probably not a federal employee at the same time. Right. So these grants allow us to recruit mentors with different skill sets than you might otherwise find in corporate America, just to make sure that the interests of our protege pool are appropriately represented on the mentor side of the house. And it's, again, we've been around a really long time. We just hit 40,000 proteges who have successfully completed the program just a couple of weeks ago. Not everyone coming to our program is maybe looking at landing a job, but probably about 50% of our veterans are going, you know what, I'm getting out of the military in a year. I don't know what's next, or I do know what's next, but you know what? I could use a hand. Getting out of the military or advancing your career. Yes, there's a lot of people who can probably do a fine job on, just as a solo endeavor.
Yeah.
But everyone can benefit from having a professional hand. And that's what our program seeks to provide for our proteges. And we're happy to do it. And the success stories are amazing. The whole idea for veterans, and it's a huge component of mental well-being. If you have meaningful employment, man, you don't have to worry about putting food on the table, making your rent. And we're able to provide such great opportunities. Okay, I know what my resume needs to look like. I know what my interview skills what among them need to be worked on. I'm learning how to network. I'm making great connections, because it's always an insane statistic to me. Most employment is through direct referral, overwhelming majority. So just blindly applying to jobs, the odds are not in your favor. ACP helps to build that network, helps to build that foundation and grow those opportunities. Salary negotiation. If you're a veteran, you got orders, and that's what you're getting paid.
That was the end of the negotiation, right?
Exactly. There's none of that. So salary negotiation is a huge piece, a totally new skill set to learn. We can help with that with our mentors. It's just there's so much going into this career development, again, whether it's seeking that first job after the military, advancing at a current career. Having a one-on-one coach is huge. In addition to that one-on-one mentorship, all of our employees are points of contact. So if you apply, it's not just, okay, you have AI communicating with you and you're just a number. You're a person. You get assigned a point of contact like myself or one of my colleagues. A human being is reaching out to you, checking in with you throughout the entire year of the mentorship, just to make sure things are going well, make suggestions for what to work on next, provide connections, provide other opportunities. And then, you mentioned different veteran service organizations. There are a ton. It's impossible for one person to navigate. And again, that's something we can help with. Hey, you know what? I need a little bit of financial planning help. No problem. You know what? We're going to come up with a curated list of great organizations to help out. I need a suit to wear on my first date. No problem. We'll get you a referral. We're here to help. We're here to make suggestions and cut out some of the clutter.
That's a ton of not so obvious points, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine somebody who's actively in the service, mil spouse, I think is a whole different animal. But those actively in service, it looks like the broad frontier, right? Like there's almost security in the discomfort of being in service. Like to your point, I didn't negotiate my salary. I just kind of got assigned this and it is what it is. But the boundaries and there's some comfort in knowing what that is. But the minute you start peeking around the curtain and go, what's out there? And it's like looking down some street in New York City is like there's a billion options and I have no idea where to start. So you threw out a lot of key terms that I've heard in speaking to different vets and organizations. One is unemployment. How many vets are unemployed? But the other, which seems to be more prevalent in the times where cost of things are going up, is underemployment. Yes. And I saw a stat on your website that proteges that come through a mentorship are seeing $40,000 increase in salary after having gone through a mentorship. So that means you had a salary and it's moved up. So, as we start talking about the individual parts of a protege or somebody applying to be a protege, talk about the requirements. I know that with as many organizations as there are, there's always this cat and mouse game of who are the right people to bring in. I would imagine somewhere in the bowels of ACP, you're saying we would love to help everybody, but we absolutely want to help those that we have the best chance of bringing the maximum amount of success to, because that success builds momentum. It allows us to get more funding. It allows us to get more partners, if you will, because they're finding value, not just in doing a good thing and hiring a vet, but also that in being a partner, like you're not just satisfying that check the box, we did it, but you're finding like these are some of the best employees you can have. So talk a little bit about, if somebody's looking, are there any minimums? Do they have to be within 1 year of getting out of the service? Are there any criteria that somebody should know before they look into ACP?
Yes. And to your point, we always encourage people when in doubt, with your application, fill it out. For veterans, it's open to all post 9/11 veterans with at least 180 days active duty post 9/11. If you're a post 9/11 veteran who served less than 180 days, but if you were injured while serving or while training, qualify. We also take active duty spouses, surviving spouses, and spouses of severely wounded post 9/11 veterans. We also take spouses of veterans who have transitioned off active duty within the past 12 months. So we've changed that just recently. So it used to be active duty, your spouse has to be on active duty. We're realizing more and more that, especially with our spouses, they're putting their careers on hold until the successful completion. So it's, timing wise, it really wasn't particularly advantageous for those spouses. So we've since opened it up to make their development a little bit easier. But like I say, the biggest thing is if you're not sure if you qualify, or even if it's the right time for you to take advantage of a mentorship, we encourage people to fill out the application anyway, especially because if they say, you know what, after talking to you, I'm just not sure I'm ready to start. Maybe in 6 months, no problem. You are working with an actual human being. We will put your application on hold and reach out to you again in 6 months to re-engage you. And if we reach out in 6 months, it's still not the right time, no problem. You give me another timeline and we'll reach back out. Again, very much white glove treatment. We want to make sure it's personalized. And it's all about anyone who wants to work on their career. Now, one thing I will say is, say you don't fall under that criteria, you're not eligible for a mentorship. That's not to say that we just wish you the best of luck. We're still connecting with you. We will still schedule this phone call and try to better understand your needs and recommend resources that you would be eligible for. And in a lot of cases, if you're professional, have a very, very solid idea of the type of information you're looking to gain, a lot of times we can set you up on a networking call with another participant.
That networking is another word that I find most veterans, when you say it, just cringe. And I'm old enough to remember when they talked about networking back in, this is pre-internet. But when they talked about networking back in the 80s, maybe even early 90s, like this picture of in a stuffy room with people you don't know in a suit and really uncomfortable conversations. It was like a job fair is what it felt like. It just, man, it felt like a waste of time. So a really good point is people are out there and they Google, where can a veteran get help? And they get 2.3 billion results.
Yes.
And they're looking at an ocean of opportunities. Take the time to fill out the ACP application. If you don't get selected, the absolute worst thing is you're right where you were before you filled out the application. The worst thing. But the best thing is this is a large organization that has a lot of fingers into a lot of different areas. So to your point, even if the ideal ACP mentorship path doesn't pan out, it doesn't mean there's not help. And sometimes the difference between a good path and a great path is that one connection that you make. So while it's not a networking event, like I definitely want to make sure we destigmatize that word, so to speak, because it's so, I hear more and more veterans talk about the power of networking and not just connecting on LinkedIn. You're not trying to make friends like Facebook. You're actually making bona fide connections and building relationships with people. There's a bond there, right? To your point, you mentioned when you got to New York, like these weren't your people, but you found one person and that probably felt like home as much as running into your mom would have, right? Having somebody you know in a place you don't is a really important thing for kind of grounding your experience there. So, all right, good deal.
Yeah.
You mentioned you came in as a protege. Do you remember what that felt like for you? Like, what have the requirements for a protege changed drastically since you first applied? And if so, can you kind of highlight what a protege would expect in their first conversation? Because it is quite a bit different than I thought it would be.
Yeah. So at least for the veteran side of the house, I don't know that mentorships have changed all that drastically during my tenure, but for the spouses, definitely. It was not long after I started that we launched the spouse mentoring program. And like I say, we just updated the criteria so that spouses whose service members have been separated for under a year can also participate. So that's a big part there. I guess for me, whenever participating in a mentorship, I was employed at ACP. So I always worry about, man, do my managers think I'm trying to jump ship? That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to improve as a manager. No, I don't think that they've changed all that much, except to say that they're always different. This is a fully customizable program. And while I would say probably the vast majority of participants are either looking for a job or looking to make a career switch, there's plenty of people looking to work on their management and leadership skills or grow their network, or they're just in the early stages of exploration of, you know what, I might not be where I want to be right now, but I don't know where I want to go. And a huge part of that is, okay, well, what's some exploration? What's an inventory of what I'm good at? What do I spark to? Can I set up some networking calls, some informational interviews, learn about different industries? And that's definitely something that the ACP can assist with.
Agree. Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I say, it's fully customizable. So what I'm seeing right now is probably the exact same thing that was happening 8 years ago or more.
Okay.
It's very customizable.
So we've talked up to this point about when somebody applies and they get matched. I want to talk a little bit about the matching part of the process and what mentorship has so many connotations to it. And I was kind of giggling, you talking about you was actually an employee and going through that, what that might have looked like to people. Yeah. So to say I'm going through an internship implies there's going to be a movement, but a mentorship, I don't care where you are in life, there's always somebody a little ahead of you on that journey. So if I can get matched with somebody that's in that regard, what does that look like in ACP? What does a mentorship look like? Talk a little bit about the mentor side, maybe, of the types of people you see there, the type of companies that come in. How does that look?
Yeah. So we get mentors from obviously our partner companies, but we also have a lot of individual contributors as well, which has been wonderful. Because, and especially when it comes to small business, if you're working for a Fortune 500 company, you're probably not running your own business on the side. There's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
The expansion of our grants program has allowed us to recruit mentors who are small business owners, and get, again, that area of interest for our protege pool addressed. But when a mentor applies, we go through the application, make sure everything checks out, and much like the proteges, the mentor is assigned a point of contact. That person reaches out with our mentor handbook, and also just a quick inquiry of, hey, what time are you available for a 15-minute phone call? We get that scheduled, and the phone call is pretty, the basic structure is just, we want to get a sense of what industries you feel comfortable speaking to, what your work history looks like, but also taking into account preferences. We have a lot of mentors who, hey, I'm a veteran myself. I don't know if I'd be able to relate to a spouse. Nothing against spouses, but that might not be my strong suit. I can work with someone who has, is going for his or her MBA, or the list goes on. And the matching process is a human-driven process. So even though we do have electronic tools to narrow down the pool, there's still someone like me reading through the profiles, making sure things line up, again, whether it be the educational background or if the mentor or protege had a gender preference, and just ensuring that we have the best possible fit. Of course, the first thing we're looking at is career fit, but we're taking into account all those preferences. And even then, whoever we identify is not an assignment. So we'll reach out and we'll provide a bio. So for example, Greg, you're a mentor. We'll say, hey, we've got this great protege. Here's a little background on the individual and where they're looking at going over the course of the next year through a mentorship. What do you think? And if you like the fit, we're moving forward. But if it's not speaking to you, hey, let us know. We don't want to force a fit unless, and usually it's something where, maybe we left something off the bio, but if it's, hey, Andrea, you know what, you really missed this. I was hoping to work with someone in the Army. I really don't want to work with a Navy member sailor. Okay, no problem. I can go back to the drawing board with that information, taking that preference into account and making sure that we get as close to honoring it as possible. And that being a human-driven process, getting everyone's buy-in is really important to making sure we have the best possible fit. If we're just kind of throwing people together, everyone might be coming in with really great intentions, but if the experience isn't applicable to the protege's goals, it's just not going to be effective for both parties. And honestly, mentors get a lot out of this process as well. I hear it all the time. Whatever job that you're working, you're probably, it's fallen to the subconscious level. You're just doing it. Mentorship requires you to start thinking critically about what you're doing, being able to explain what your day-to-day looks like, explaining how you were able to build your network and strategizing ways for your protege to achieve success. It just makes you better at what you do.
Yeah, you mentioned a while ago when we talked about you coming into ACP and the types of people there, and most are not veterans.
Mm-hmm.
I found the same thing. I'm actually a mentor for ACP. I've been matched with a protege for about 6 months. I got to admit, when I first saw the bio, in case he listens to this episode, I'm like, he's got 33 years of service.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not qualified to talk to this guy. And it clicked in the back of my mind. He's not looking for somebody to help him in the military, which I'm obviously not qualified to do. He's looking for somebody to help him navigate out of that into civilian life, which I do have 30 years of experience in. And that was just an aha moment for me.
Yeah.
That really changed that conversation. And in my case, he's on the verge of separating out and really had zero idea what he wanted to do. He didn't know if he wanted to be remote or in the office. He didn't know big company or small company.
Yeah.
He really wasn't sure what job he wanted to do at whatever company he landed at. So we've just been talking through industry and kind of news cycle. AI, anybody heard of that? Things out there that are disrupting all of our lives. And to your point, it really made me think about my career and my job and what I do day in and day out. I joke with him all the time, man, the internet didn't even exist when you went in. How are you learning all this? But again, I think it's a misnomer that most people think about, that everybody goes to the military is driving a tank and loading bombs. And there's a lot of tech. There's a lot of project management. And there's a lot of budgeting and presentation. And hey, guess what? They know Microsoft Office, which is a requirement for almost any job out there in tech. So just, again, don't discount all those things you did in your 4 years or 8 years or 33 years. These are all things that you can put on a resume. And the matching process, I got to say, was quite surprising. For me, I didn't expect a personal reach out. I kind of thought I'd get an email, here's your person, reach out and begin that. And it was very personal. And I had the right to refuse my protege, and they had a right to refuse me as a mentor if it didn't feel like right on either side, because it's in everybody's best interest that chemistry is there and can work from there. And it's also an open door once that process starts. If you meet 2 or 3 or 4 times and go, you know what, I gave it a shot. I don't know if I can do the right thing here. That person says, I'm not feeling it, whatever. Life shows up. And the mentor all of a sudden has a life event that says, I just can't do this. I
Right,
want to do a
right.
whole separate episode with you just about the mentor side, because I think there's so many things there that
Yeah.
if people knew how there are no barriers of entry,
No,
or
no,
very, very few. So I want to get into
e
that, but I think we could do a whole
yeah.
episode on it.
Yeah, no, we do have our general guidelines for mentors, but to your point, the vast majority of our mentors have never served in the military. And when I do the onboarding calls with our veteran applicants, we always ask, like, do you prefer someone with a military background? Certainly a few do say, yeah, I'd like to work with a veteran. Generally, it's not a deal breaker for starters. More often though, I hear people who say, no, I'd like a strict civilian. I don't want to fall into the trap
Yeah.
of continuing to use military slang. I mean, I want a straight civilian perspective.
Right.
So yeah, it's you are the guide, the Sherpa of the civilian world, and past military experience not required.
Yeah. Yeah. The language in and
Exactly.
of itself is a difficult thing. And I'm not advocating one way or the other, but that may be one advantage to speaking to a non-veteran mentor is you're going to
Hmm.
begin to learn a language that you don't presently speak. Most
Yeah.
veterans that I talk to either went in right after high school or very shortly thereafter. Their life experience, civilian
Yeah.
experience, if you will, is extremely limited, if not zero.
Hmm.
And they just need
Yeah.
some base to be built under them that they can start climbing up from. And my mind wants to go into the whole idea about what resources you guys have for mentors. But again, let's set that aside for now.
Okay.
Beyond
Yeah.
the mentorship, talk about the structure of mentoring a little bit, just in terms of the recurrence of that. How often, how long does it go on? What does a session typically look like, kind of a thing? How can you
Yeah.
summarize
So
that?
yeah, so the requirement is it's a year-long one-on-one mentorship, and you do have that ACP point of contact supporting. We ask that people meet for at least 1 hour per month, but parties can meet for more than that if they would like. And of course, that's another thing I'll mention. Most of our mentorships are not a local arrangement. They're long distance. If you can meet face to face, phenomenal, but video conference over the phone, that works. And we encourage people to plan ahead for the discussions, have some manner of an agenda shared ahead of time, because, and we also ask that our proteges are the ones driving the conversation. Mentors have just a huge expansive experience that they can share, but they only really know what to speak to if their protege tells them. So we do ask that the proteges create the agenda. Okay, this is what I want to work on this week. This is where I'm at. And mentors can start generating some ideas of how to build that particular skill set. And the first call, I would say 9 times out of 10, just getting to know each other, kind of establishing some guidelines. You know what? I'm really responsive to email, text, I tend to ignore. These are the
Yeah.
dates and times that I'm generally available. I like Zoom, Google Meet, no thanks, that type of
Sure.
thing. So building that initial structure, of course, is very important. And we also send along in introducing a mentor and a protege. We also include kind of a format, a guideline to map out the course of the mentorship. So, okay, you know what? In the first quarter, we're just going to work on resume and interview skills. But moving into that second quarter, now we're ready for that networking piece. Do I have an elevator pitch? Am I ready for the job fairs? Third quarter, pursuing opportunities in earnest. And what does the interview process look like? Was my preparation on point? Are there any adjustments I need to make? Oh, I should send a thank you note post interview,
Hmm.
different things like that. And hopefully, if it's a more of a job seeking type goal for the mentorship, hopefully the protege does land a job during the course of the mentorship. And a lot of people think that's the tipping point. Okay, you know what? I didn't hit a year, but I landed a job. I achieved my goals. Yes, but we encourage people to stick with it because there's more to cover. Uh,
Sure.
Congratulations on your first post military career. How do you prepare for a performance review? Do you have a long
Yeah.
term career plan?
Once again, this is a conversation, not a dictate like it was in the military, right? So, yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Just having that structure. And again, we obviously if people want to, hey, you know what, I'm so busy with the job, I really don't have the bandwidth, and honestly, mission accomplished. That's great. We encourage the mentor and protege to stay in touch informally. It's not an official ACP mentorship anymore, but hey, stay connected on LinkedIn, send each
sure,
other holiday cards, all those good things, and you have someone to call on down the road if you need some help and need some
yeah,
perspective. But a lot of times our proteges stick with it and they go, okay, you know what, those are some things I hadn't even considered. I don't even know what to do with that. I'm going to discuss that with my mentor while I still have the time and the direct ACP support. And like I say, every mentorship's different, but yeah, in general, we encourage people to structure it out ahead of time. And once, or even reverse engineer it. Okay, I'm getting out in 6 months. In 1 year, I want to be employed at a large company, and I know I want to be remote. Okay, now let's reverse engineer what we need to do and the timelines that are going to apply to it.
Sure. Yeah, I would think expectation management's a really, really important part of this. I think, that's true whether you went in the military or not. Like, you just don't know what that first corporate job's going to look like. What's it going to feel like when I show up the first day? I want to highlight something that maybe doesn't seem so obvious. When a veteran or a mil spouse is looking at a resource like this, it is not a magic bullet. Right. So you just said something that may not seem obvious to some people, but it's a year-long mentorship. Does that mean I won't get a job for a year? You just described? No, it doesn't mean that. But what it may mean is when you start, you're still in the military. You haven't started applying yet because you're not able to start full-time employee for 6 months, let's say. Secondly, you have no idea what you want to do. So you have time to work through that. Third, you've not been on an interview since you met with a recruiter way back in the day. And by the way, those are not the same. So you may want to find a different resource that helps you with interview prep. You may have a whole nother resource to help you with resume prep. And I'm not trying to spit out a list that people need 14 resources to lean on. But what it does mean is anybody who's trying to be expert at all things is probably not going to be great at any. So this mentorship, in my opinion, allows somebody to go and move at whatever rate they need to on these other fronts. Like, there's not much reason to do a resume until you have some idea where it is you want to go, right? To highlight my time moving bullets around, if I decide I want to go into the ministry, those may not be the best skills to try and correlate. So there's a lot to go through there. So that may not seem obvious to some people, but as you're beginning to have the conversation out loud that I'm going to get out, I think I'm going to do it about this time. Maybe you've not put papers in yet, so it's not official. There are things you can start lining up and doing without having any risk or interruption to your military performance or activities. Somebody might say, well, I don't even want to tell them that I'm getting out yet. Great. You can do Zoom meetings at 9:00 at night. It doesn't matter. As long as you know what those things are and your boundaries, then you can find a mentor that matches you to make sure that works out best for you.
Yeah. And anything when it comes to career development, I mean, you're going to put in effort, and we aren't a job placement program. That's not what we're about. It's getting you the support so all the hard work that you're inevitably going to be doing no matter what isn't going to be in vain. You have a much better shot of achieving your goals, developing a clearer picture and game plan with help from a professional, from a mentor, and with the resources that we'll provide depending on what discrete goals you're working on. Okay, I'm going for an interview. Great. Is it a phone interview? Is it a panel interview? What are we talking about here? Just to make sure that you're preparing for the right thing. Hey, don't forget to write a thank you note. 12% of the people didn't get a job because they didn't write a thank you note. Just different things like that, just to make sure that we're optimizing your efforts. The more optimized, the more likely they are to bear the fruit and help you achieve your goals.
There's so many things that I've learned on this journey with a passion for the military and wanting to do things that I didn't even think about. My protege continues to say this: I'm not ready to interview yet, and that's fine, but I don't want my first interview to be the interview. Like, I finally found the job at the company, and this is the first time I've done an interview. So there are companies out there who do nothing but mock interviews. And these aren't just your average mentors who show up and relay questions. They actually sit down and they say mock bona fide interview to get a sense of what that feels like, what your presentation is, not just what you say, but how you say it. What is a thank you note? What is a panel interview? Good Lord, that sounds horrible. So there's so many things that maybe you haven't even gotten to yet.
I'd argue that veterans might do a little bit better on a panel interview because that's going to look very much like a board. But
in a lot of ways will correlate. And the whole purpose of this is to help you navigate the uncertainty as you face that. Man, I have a hard time finding a place to end this one, Andrea, because there's so many things about the mentorship I want to get into, but I think we'll save that for the next time. I do want to say, you've given me a handful of links, but I want to highlight things about ACP. And there's like one page of the website called Our Impact that gets in the statistics of how many service members versus military spouses. There's so much great information there. So we'll put links in the show notes on how to contact ACP, recapping some of the things that Andrea has highlighted today. how to apply as a protege, how to apply as a mentor. I think there's one page that are detailing what a matching looks like, if I remember right. So just a great program. And we're not talking hundreds of people. We're talking tens of thousands that have gone through this program. So bigger is not always better. But in this case, this is a machine that's well-oiled, has a lot of experience, has a lot of people at play. And I just can't speak highly enough about the people that I've had interactions with in getting here. So any closing thoughts you would like to have on today's topic?
Yeah, first one would be January is National Mentoring Month. So if you're thinking about a mentorship for yourself or you're thinking about giving back as a mentor, please check those show notes, fill out the appropriate application. We would love to have you. And if you're a protege, when it comes to career development, you are going to put in some effort. The effort is going to be worth it. Be open to learning and do some planning and take advantage of this opportunity. And I liken our program a bit like dipping your foot into rushing river. I mean, that current is going to carry you off. You just need to take that first step, and we will assist in any way we can to help you get to your goals.
Great point. Yeah, and we mentioned earlier that why a protege should apply, whether they're perfect for it or not, go ahead and apply. I would say the same thing's true for mentors.
Yes.
If you just think, I might want to do this, but I'm scared of it, I don't think I'm qualified, but let me just try it. Go put your application in today. Put it in. The absolute worst thing is you fill it out, somebody calls you, you go, that's not what I thought it was, sorry. Or maybe it is what I thought it was, but knowing what I know now, I can't start for 3 months. That's fine. You're in the bank, you're in the system, your toes in the river, so to speak.
Yes.
Do something. We all can do something. And this is a great call to action to get people off their couch, if you will, and get involved in this game. It's a really important thing that we can do. And I, least of all, can say that I can show up and bring something to the table to help a service member find their way. So thank you so much for your service, but thank you again for your time today. Support. I really look forward to following this up with more on the mentor side, talk about some of the challenges that you guys see there in terms of getting new people in and keeping people. And I want to get into just the wealth of resources that goes to supporting mentors once that engagement starts. So again, it's not just you show up and you're expected to know everything. There's resources for the resources. So there's a lot to get into there. We'll save that. But thank you so much for your time. Having a wonderful holiday season. Thanks for your time, Andrea.
Absolutely, Greg. My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. And have a wonderful holiday season yourself.
Thank you. That's going to wrap up this episode of Serious Talk, the Military Minute. A huge thank you again to Andrea Bryant and the team at American Corporate Partners for the work they're doing alongside veterans and military spouses as they chase meaningful careers after service. If this conversation helped you see your transition a little more clearly or gave you even one idea you can act on, do me a favor. Follow or subscribe to this show so you don't miss future episodes. Leave a rating and a review. That helps other veterans and spouses find this content. And most importantly, share this episode with a veteran or a military spouse who's on a similar journey and might feel a little stuck right now. If you are that veteran or spouse, your call to action is simple. You don't have to figure this out alone. Reach out, apply for mentorship, start networking, and take one concrete step this week toward the life you actually want after the military. You've already done harder things than this. To our veteran and military spouse community, from the bottom of my heart and all of us here at Sirius, thank you. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice and for everything your families carry that most people never see. This podcast exists to remind you that your skills, your character, and your story are deeply needed in today's world. Don't forget, there are links and resources in the show notes with recommended content based on today's episode, including ways to connect with ACP and other tools you can use to help you translate your service into opportunity. And finally, a special thank you to Jason Fowler for allowing use of his song, Mystery Road. Until next time, keep moving forward with purpose, and remember, you're not walking this road alone.